Hey guys, Atlantean Vampire here. With that former previous video, the prelude, out of the way, explaining why I deleted the original Vapors of Death video, and moving forward with this one, I'd also like to get out of the way. There was a kind of a point that I wanted to include into this main video. I could have edited it but I did not. And it was going over like the actual like alchemical and kind of folklore and just like hidden history behind the vampiric mist that you see in mythology and pop culture, right? And the video was a little too long. It was like 20 something minutes long. And this video may be long enough as it is. And just for the sake of practicality, I don't think I could properly edit those two together. But even then, it would have been too long and drawn out. And I'd rather kind of get into the actual methods, right? So I'll leave a link in the description if you want to watch that, if that interests you, right? If not, then you don't have to click on it. But I think it's just as crucial to this video as any other part of it, right? So anyways, go and find a place that is misty, right? If you live in the Northeast, right, and you live near a forest, right, or you have a backyard, and it's like early in the morning, there's fog everywhere, lots of pine trees. That's the perfect kind of environment for it, right? And even then, before you do that, right, I'm getting way too ahead of myself. I feel weird repeating this, but yeah. How do I say this in a civilized way that's less edgy? Well, no, it's just going to come off as edgy. You're going to need the literal vapors of death before you do anything, right? You need to get some type of rotting organic matter. It could be, I guess, a plant or vegetable or fruit, possibly, but I don't think that would work. I really don't. And I trust that if you have vegan sentiments, you're probably not practicing vampirism in any form whatsoever. But anyways, um, you know, I'd recommend going into the grocery store and getting a piece of meat that is, almost going to expire, where they put a large discount on it, and take that. Or more potently, in my opinion, because there's a lot of vital energy that is present, or whatever, and having that kind of connection with the animal um, before you inhale the vapors of death is very useful for forming a type of connection I can't quite describe. Because a lot of this is instinctual, but if you go to the pet store and get an animal that you would buy to feed a snake, like a rat or a mouse or something like that, kill it, obviously, absorb its life essence if you already know how to do that from the previous video, right? Or not even the previous video, but in general, I'm assuming you already know some basic form of energy absorption, right? Anyways, get the organic matter and put it in a jar, and kind of there's multiple ways you could do this. Just don't let it build up and explode. If you live in an area where you're not going to have neighbors complain, and you're not worried about animals, just kind of leave it out with like cheesecloth or something, um, you know, or leave it open a crack, or make sure to air it out. Either way, do it with courtesy for those around you, right? Um, if you're just in a situation where you're preferably isolated, that works out the best. But yeah, take this jar of rotting flesh and go somewhere that's very misty, right? Or even smoky, you could say, right? Anywhere where there is some type of mist or smoke or something like that, it is useful, right? Or even steam, right? Which is steam is really good. You can I'm not going to recommend doing this in a sweat lodge or a sauna. No, that would actually, I don't think that would that's a completely different experience. But yeah, no. It's just preferable if there's a lot of condensation, right? A lot of mist. You know, for me, it would be going into the middle of the woods naked and doing this and just laying down on the forest floor, but I'm not going to realistically expect anyone to do such a thing, especially with the fear of ticks and all of that. Um, but I do it kind of to offer myself to nature, right? Because I know there's going to be a lot of mosquitoes out and about, and I'll let the mosquitoes feast on my blood. If I'm going to engage in a vampiric experience that's at the spiritual expense of nature, I don't mind giving some of my physical blood, to the physical vampiric creatures of the world, right? I don't mind that at all. But again, I don't realistically expect you to do such a thing. Anyways, so I had to look up how you, at least some of the steps to putting your heart in a catatonic beat, right? Um, and it's very important. And I honestly, I just do this by default, right? I'm so used to leaving my body that I think my body just kind of does it like subconsciously. And I actually had to look up how to consciously do it because I realized that unless you genuinely like train yourself for a long time to do such a thing, or you're just naturally a vampire and you can tap into this, you're gonna have to just have the conscious knowledge. So basically, you kind of inhale very deeply, and you also exhale very slowly, like just very slowly, and it has something to do with the para something nervous system, technical medical jargon I don't understand, and it just slows down your heartbeat, right? And I think it lowers your body temperature, right? Anyways, lay down, pray to whatever gods or goddesses and worship or whatever, or the one, um, and just get your protection and lay down. And I feel weird repeating myself, just because I already made this video. But yeah, basically, slow down your heartbeat and imagine light traveling from your crown to your third eye, to your throat, to your solar plexus, to your sacral, to your root, just letting all that light flow through as you ground yourself to the earth, as you ground yourself to the world around you, you know, and basically just relax, just breathe in very deeply, very fast, and exhale very slowly, and you'll start to feel this feeling of impending doom if you haven't trained yourself like a scuba diver. And I think I mentioned that in the previous video. Like either the first vampiric methods video or the original Vapors of Death video that I deleted. But you basically, and I recommend doing this with somebody who's, either a medical professional or they've had formal training from like some type of scuba school. But if you hold your breath long enough, your body will release extra oxygen it has stored. But you never usually, as a normal person, get to that point because a lot of existential dread kind of just takes over, right? It just takes over, and you just start rapidly breathing. That is very powerful. So I'd say it's the sharp, deep inhale using the diaphragm, and then the slow exhale, and then that in combination with holding your breath for that scuba diver reflex. Doing a combination of those things in whichever order feels right to you, right? And for me, darkness helps a lot. If you can find a really dark place, and again, a lot of naturally occurring fog, mist, whatever, smoke. The smoke is risky, as you don't want to suffocate, but whatever. Just for me, I personally prefer the enclosed spaces for such a thing, but that's really up to you. But now, really, to kind of hammer the nail into the coffin, pun intended, right? You're going to get that jar, and you're going to deeply inhale that rotted vapor. You're going to inhale the vapors of death, of decay, of rot. You're going to inhale it, and sure, you could say maybe there's some psychoactive effect. Personally, with me, that's never been the case. I don't know if there's anything that, it just sounds like something that would get you high. That's not really the intent of this, right? There's a more spiritual reason to do this. But if you do get high, cool, I know there's high meat where you can eat rotted meat and it gets you high and it's good for your gut. I don't know if inhaling it would do the same. We're not trying to do some weird type of African drug where they inhale cow poop. That's not what we're trying to do here. But anyways, you inhale that. You let that integrate itself into you. This what was once life turned into a type of gaseous state, and that's a good prelude, and I think it helps subconsciously. It really attaches to something primal within you, and kind of shifts your perspective, right? And again, ripping off Christopher Penczak, you're going to count from 12 down to 1, and you're going to imagine in your mind's eye white numbers. I'm so tired. White numbers, the white number 12, and then count down. And then you're in lighter ritual consciousness. And then you'll go into deeper ritual consciousness in which you will internalize the concept of the number 12 all the way down to the number 1 without visualizing it, right? You're just like, that it's there. And as you're doing these breathing methods and you count down, your body should start to feel a lot more colder. Your bones will just settle. Everything will become much lighter, and you'll just be, kind of dead in many ways, right? And then kind of when you reach this state, right? This is a very important thing, right? Imagine everything around you is fading. Every notion of your friends and family, right? Every notion of your desires, your goals, your wants, everything. You're letting go. You're surrendering to the void. You're surrendering to this space between spaces, right? You, ironically enough, even though this is for your own personal empowerment, you need to learn how to let go of control in order to gain control. So you just kind of have to surrender. Imagine you're actually dying. Like somehow, if you can convince yourself, internalize that this is the end. And when you feel these feelings of despair and doom, dread, embrace it, and again, this can ruin the experience, causing you to jolt up and then it's over. Then in that case, just go about your day-to-day life and just keep doing it, right? Until you also manage, if you can get past that point, to internalize that you are not experiencing despair, you are not experiencing dread, you're not experiencing fear or existential terror. You are the dread. You are the despair, right? And you are the concept, right? And in general, the you is kind of left behind. You are these things, right? You embrace it. And for me, I see something that follows this that I can't quite describe, It's like a red glowing distortion in this void, right? And I don't think I brought this up in the previous video, but I just kind of, things are different in a way to which I just cannot explain it. I cannot explain it to you, but yeah. Now, unlike the putrefaction of flesh, right? Just imagine, right? You're being lowered into this grave. Your family's crying over you. You're gone. Everyone's going to miss you, or they're going to forget about you. Only your reputation is known to you, right? However they would react. And whether they forget about you or they remember you, they sing, they cry, doesn't matter. That's down to you. They're going through the motions, and each and every passing moment you are leaving the land of the living. You know, you're no longer a person. You're just flesh. You're just meat, right? And this is a good, philosophy to have in general, A lot of people will go, what right do you have to consume another animal, to kill another animal? Would you like it if another animal ate you? And what I find interesting is most people that eat meat have a gigantic, disgusting ego where they're like, no, it's absolutely unacceptable. Whereas if you go into a more vampiric mentality, you're like, oh no, I am absolutely an object. People are objects. My flesh is nutritious. If a bear kills me and eats it, as long as it's feeding its cubs, that's good. Because if I kill a bear, I'm going to not only eat that, I will not only eat that flesh, but I'll give that bear meat to my kids or my family member, right? Hold on. Anyways, so it's a good philosophy. You are, I'm thinking the Lion King, right? The cycle of life. You eat the deer, and then you become the grass to which the deer eat, right? You're just letting go. And this might be a little too intense, and I should put a viewer's discretion advised thing. Again, I'm not trying to be edgy like that last video, that I made where I engaged in some fang-faggery and took my frustrations off on the viewer for the way people treat my kind. This is, in my opinion, relevant and very sensitive, right? If you've ever had a suicide attempt that was almost successful or successful and you were revived, that's a good feeling to lean into, right? And here's the thing, like, because it makes it like you're reminding yourself of actually what it's like to fade, and it makes it easier to go into this mindset of fading, of letting go, right? Embracing the void. And for me, and again, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, I imagine that my wrists are slit and I'm in a bathtub, right? Or a grave, and I'm just being drained of my fluids. I'm just becoming nothing. I'm becoming just dead, a bloated corpse, right? And I imagine animals, coming over to my bloated corpse, and they sink their teeth, right? And the piercing of flesh, right? All of my essence, my life essence, like the alchemist in the flask that I mentioned in the unlisted video, drawing his last breaths in the homunculi flask, right? Basically, just instead of focusing all of your essence in the melted flesh that flows through the water, in this case, transfer the essence to corrupted air, to the gases of rigor mortis. Infuse every bit of your remaining consciousness with this and allow it to flow upwards, right? And this void that you're in, right? Just imagine it starts to turn into an environment that is suitable to you, right? Because for me, I'm just saying what's suitable to me. A forest. I imagine it just turns into a gigantic forest. Well, I mean, it could be a public park. It could be, New York City. Could be anywhere. Could be the desert. But I'm just going off of what my source of reference is, what my lexicon is. And, lexicon. Thank you. I have a friend that uses that word often, and it's very good. Thank you. But yeah, so I just imagine there's this giant forest, and I imagine my essence, my being, kind of just expands into this, just cloud, right, to the air. And, basically as I'm diluted in the air, I imagine there are animals walking around the forest, and they're breathing in the fog, and you become one with the fog. I just imagine, multiple animals breathing you in, right? If you've followed the methods of the putrefaction of flesh, I'm not going to explain it as doing this one by one, because at this point, if you feel like you're ready, then you already know how to divert your consciousness into multiple hosts at once. But anyways, Just imagine these different woodland creatures are breathing this gas in. They're breathing you in, right? And your different fragments of consciousness are in their bloodstream. You're part of the oxygen in their blood, right? And now imagine, you go from being more than just oxygen, right? You start to become their blood. You start to become their DNA. Think like the flood from Halo. Imagine slowly they're becoming more like you from the inside out. And just imagine, all of their organic matter inside their body turning into a rotted gas, like all of it's dematerializing, all the nutrients, proteins, fats, all of that, the vitamins in their organs, all that life force just turns into a gaseous form within them, and it hollows them out, leaving only the skin, right? And in this process, the animal will freak out, it'll asphyxiate, it will be in a lot of pain, which is why it's best to do this quickly. And the animal will, under your control, or rather the skin suit of the animal, you make it exhale really hard, and a concentrated version of this gas that you've become, that's was diluted when it breathed it in, is coming out more concentrated as it's you know the animal drops to the ground, kind of folding in on itself like a long piece of leather, right? And imagine all these animals doing this all at once, right? And now you've not only turned them into more of what you are, but you've also in many ways taken their nature, right? Their strength, their virility, their wisdom, their abilities, their great sense of smell, hearing, right? Just everything, their horns, their teeth. It's all been turned to a gaseous form, right? And again, I want to save the whole integrating the natures and, manifesting that into a more physical form when it comes to the video focusing on Earth, focusing on what you could say is the most basic attempt, right? The most basic, like, okay, now that you've understood the natures of these things and you can really feel the natures, you can create your own mental matrix, taking away qualities that you don't like about yourself mentally and replacing it with ones you view as impressive about these animals, right? Turning that into, how can I turn myself into a gigantic chimeric abomination and not only just express these natures, but physically embody them. Well, not physically, but spiritually embody them in a way that's more than just the mental, right? You're turning into this monster in the astral realm, and you're using these different predatory and prey-like abilities for the sake of creating your own pattern of hunting. We'll get into that into the last video. And, again, I think all of these other methods, it's more important to talk about them because, again, if you're being hunted, right, and, again, someone stabs you in a chakra, that could cause damage that lasts you quite a few incarnations, right? Or you have to hire someone to heal. Or if you're a natural vampire, you can heal it rather instantly. But if you're a normal person that's connected to source, it's very hard, right? A lot of people, some people have regeneration abilities. A lot of people don't, and it causes, a lot of damage done to you during a bad traveling experience can bode really bad for your mental health and your physical health. And, just imagine like the enemy is stabbing you in the chakra or cutting off a spiritual limb. That might even give you chronic pain. However, if you remember the putrefaction of flesh video that focuses on the vampiric, version of focusing on the element of water, and someone stabs you and internally you're liquid, you've liquefied your chakras and it's evenly distributed, they cut through you and you just, you plop back together like water. They blast you with some energy bolt, you turn into a puddle, and then you can literally wash away in a stream and reconstitute yourself somewhere else. Well, in this case, it's even better because now you're in the form of gas, and there's no point in which the enemy can specifically curse or hex or bind you, right? you're in gas. That's hard to work with. You can't really attack the element of air. You can't really curse the element of air. You know, whereas if you're in this physical form and you're this chimeric abomination of different animals and beasts and mythical creatures you've hunted in the astral, you know, and have integrated their essences, that's more points of attack. That's, you know, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? So again, I think it's very important to focus on these aspects before we get into it. But, you know, as you're, you know, a part of this greater mist, for me, I'm imagining it right now as red. It's red mist, right? Again, you know, a lot of things in pop culture that vampires and werewolves do are an occult metaphor for what actual vampires or werewolves do. They're the same creature, spiritually, right? All of these things you see are really just metaphors given to us by the elites for what is done spiritually, right? So I'm imagining red mist. It could be green mist. It could be black mist, right? And again, you know, just imagine like another way of killing the animal is it breathes you in and you're a part of it, right? And this is, you know, referencing the other video on the putrefaction of flesh. It breathes you in, right? The gas is in its lungs. Imagine your gaseous form inside this animal turns into liquid, putrefied flesh. Now, you've given the animal pneumonia. Its lungs are full of disgusting flesh juice, and it'll literally drown without having to be in water. You can go into a creature, condense your gaseous form into liquid, and weigh the creature down. And then you could, you know, take the methods from that first video on advanced vampiric techniques and go into the animal in gaseous form and devour it from the inside out using the water method. And you could literally pour out of its mouth in the form of liquid and find the closest stream, right? Now you have like two methods that can work together, right, in tandem, you know, two different states of matter, you know. I was going to really explain the gas through all the methods you can do with just the gas. But yeah, why not go back to basics? You can do water and air, right? But to focus on each specific one, gain mastery over each specific one on a vampiric level, you know, then the afterthought, like I don't need to explain to you the different combinations. If you're confident in each one specifically, when you use each other in tandem, it's not a problem. That's down to you. I don't even need to teach you that, right? It's just common sense, right? Although common sense isn't too common, granted, especially nowadays. But yeah, you know. So just imagine this mist that you're a part of is just going through the forest, right? And another method that I did not mention in the deleted video is, let's say prey is running away from you. There's just something in this spirit animal that's like, you know, it's like, oh, I feel like I know what's going on here, right? There's something bad in that fog and it's trying to get me. Well, okay. It will try to run through the fog, right? To try to get out of the fog. You know, that's one method it might do, right? Or it'll try to run away from the fog. What you can do is you can corral it, right? You can manipulate which sections of the forest do not have fog versus which ones have the fog. And you can kind of like shepherd it to an area where it'll be cornered, but then it could just run right through you before you get a chance to go inside of it, right? Because in the form of gas, it could hold its breath, because, you know, spirit animals are much smarter than living animals, right? In fact, like an animal gets killed as roadkill, it ends up in the spirit world. You know, it's a lot more intelligent in a way that, you know, it would have been more appreciated in life, obviously. But it's like, okay, well, now I really know not to get hit by a car in the spirit world. But anyways, you know, the animal could run through the fog, right? And you're like, shit, I can't get it. Well, no fear. Just reconstitute some of that gas into a puddle on the forest floor. And as it's running, right, becomes sticky and it gets stuck in the tar. and then drown it like a woolly mammoth getting drowned in a tar pit. You can do that. Your liquid vampiric flesh, you can do that and consume it. And another method is, imagine there is a cliff, right? Even though it's the spirit world and everything can fucking float, everything can do whatever, spirits can still die in ways they would physically, especially if they are a creature that's main mental matrix and how it interprets a realm of formless energy is what it was like in life, especially for you hunting it, with that also being your closest source of reference. It could end in a very physical scenario, right? Where you could chase this animal off a cliff. And even though, yes, it could technically float away onto like some floating spirit island, it's not going to do that because number one, its only source of reference is the material universe. And number two, it's a deer. It's not that bright. And in the spirit world, as you do, or as you wish, it is done, right? Or as you think it is done, let thy will be done. So it is done. And that deer, if it thinks it's going to die when it crashes down off that cliff, oh, absolutely. So kind of corral it with this fog and have it kill itself for you. And then you can just consume it. I mean, there's so many applications you can do with this vampiric mist, this vampiric vapor. And at this point, your physical body is in a catatonic state. Your heart is barely beating, your body is cold, and you look as stiff as a corpse. I did this once when I was younger. I was like, what, 18? I was in my bed, and this is funny. No, actually, I think it was 17. I was in my bed, and my heart went catatonic, and I was in the astral realm hunting. And I wasn't in mist form, granted, but I was still in this type of state of being. And my mom comes in, and she genuinely, because unfortunately she's seen dead people, she went into the room and shook me awake, ending my experience prematurely. And I was like, "Yo, what, hey, what's going on?" And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I know it was irrational. I just looked at you, and I just thought you were dead, and I don't know, motherly instincts. I just felt the urge to just like shake you awake. I'm sorry." And yeah, that was I can't blame her. I thought I'd have privacy, but mothers have just an instinct that you can't really comprehend. They have eyes in the back of their heads. They can sense things, and essentially I was in a way killing myself temporarily so I could come back stronger. Like people's bodies don't naturally go into that kind of state. So yeah, I mean, she was correct and not in the wrong, but damn, I was like, I was so flustered when I woke up. I was like, oh, holy shit. Yeah, but yeah, no. There's just so many applications, and again, I think I could end the video here, because there's not much I can think about. I've said my piece. There's that video that's going to be in the description below that should have been included in this video, but I just decided not to, right? I just decided not to, but yeah. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this seemed more professional, more well put together. Oh, yeah. Uh, well, do I need to explain how you end this scenario? Because I mentioned it in the original video. And I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you watched that video. But I'll just say it in case you forgot. Basically just reconstitute all of this gas back into a physical form resembling a human body, resembling yourself. And again, you should feel this rush of just raw, visceral happiness, strength, And I guess for some people, raw sexual stamina. That's not really what happens with me, but I'm not really a sexual vampire. So, anyways, and just imagine this mist, right? This is actually, oh yes, this is the part I wanted to mention. This, for some reason, the song "The Final Countdown" is playing in my head. Like it's the final countdown. down, da 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 da. Anyways, imagine, instead of even reconstituting yourself like that first video, this will make you feel like a vampire. Take all of that mist that you are and travel through whatever realm this is. Kind of imagine all of the environment fading around you back into a void. And imagine your physical human body that you left behind, not the one that you imagine rotting, so you turn into vapor, but your actual physical body in its bed, or in my case, in a hammock. And just imagine your room filling with mist. And then just physically breathe and inhale all of that vapor, all of that life force that you stole from those animals into your physical body. When you wake up, you'll be like, holy fucking shit. That's probably the most rewarding part, right? That's the most rewarding part of the experience. Absolutely. Like hands down the best, so that's the part I really wanted to mention. And, and then obviously, think inside your head the numbers 1 to 12, right? And then kind of verbalize while imagining the letter, or the number, why am I saying letter? The number 1, and then visualize it up to 12. And then, thank your gods or whatever bullshit, superstition, squeeze the goat's testicles, whatever, and then wake up and you'll be feeling fresh and crisp, bro. You'll be feeling good. Now that's where I will end this video.